Hey guys, what's going on? It's Tyson the Trainer, back with another episode of Sports Talk. And today we're going to be talking about fueling your training. I guess. So basically what I want to kind of cover today is give you an idea about, how you're actually going to, best utilize your training based on having supplements and things like that as you are actually going through the activity to help you perform at your best, right? Now, I guess first and foremost, kind of what we've covered before is going to depend on what your sport's actually going to be and what your goals are overall. So we have covered before that there are certain times where you want to train on an empty stomach to obviously, increase the mitochondrial density overall and just to increase your performance. So having those adaptions and training on a fasted stomach is going to have a certain period of time where it's going to be beneficial. And these are going to be usually your longer distance. I think I said longer, slower. I said longer, slower distance paces where you're keeping your heart rate above that 65 beats per minute, and predominantly going to be using fat for the most part. You will be using a combination of fat and carbohydrates always, but it's going to be more of that ratio skewed. So basically under that 65 percent of your heart rate maximum, you're going to be using more of that fat as a fuel source. So when we think about that and how we're going to be able to actually translate that into any type of fueling the performance, I guess it's going to be depend on, again, like when your training's actually going to be. So in these longer, slower ones, you can actually do fasted cardio for the most part if you want to, on an empty stomach, as you do have a lot of fuel reserves from fat that can be used as a fuel source. And the more you do it on an empty stomach, the better your body actually gets at using fat as a fuel source, right? However, there are times we also want to use carbohydrates as a fuel source, because at the end of the day, carbohydrates are going to improve your performance, and especially during your event of the day, whether it be, again, your marathon event, your cycling event, your triathlete, whatever you're going to do, that's actually going to help boost that performance. So having carbohydrates in the body, especially while training, is going to benefit you more than hinder you. It's going to create your best performance, which is also why we have the training load, doing these fasted exercises, doing those things to help with the mitochondria, to help with the training adaptions. But then when it does come to race day, we use our carbohydrates as our fuel source. So apart from that, what I would probably recommend for a lot of you is when you're doing your more intense type of training above that 65% of your heart rate max and pushing it for longer periods of time, that is when you're going to want to use more of the carbohydrate as your fuel source, because we only have so much muscle glycogen we can use, and the more we start to contract muscle and the longer we start to do it, the more we're going to deplete that muscle glycogen. And when the muscle glycogen goes down, the body's going to have a hard time being able to keep that intensity while also, being able to contract muscle, because now we're depleting our muscle glycogen, we're depleting our liver glycogen, which will be gone quite quickly. And again, you're going to start to notice that you start to fatigue over time. And this is also why we need to have, again, like I just said, we need to have times where we do have carbohydrates in our system and we don't have carbohydrates in our system. So ideally, when it comes to training, if you're going to be doing something that's going to be longer than an hour, you're going to want to look to have some type of liquid carbohydrate if you can. That's going to contain about 60 grams of glucose, okay? So that is what we found roughly to be like the maximum amount of glucose you can actually uptake in an hour. So basically 1 gram of glucose per minute is going to be the best thing. So if you're going to get yourself, let's say, a Powerade bottle, and I was drinking Powerade, it's only got 25 grams of carbohydrates in it, So in that, I could technically have 2 and a little bit bottles of Powerade during an hour of training, right? However, we're not going to be using that much liquid, because having too much liquid in the stomach's not going to be a good thing either. And this is why we have those little power gels. You can see that the gels, some have caffeine, some don't have caffeine, and they're going to be able to get in your system quite quickly. And usually they're probably going to be around that 30 to 40 gram carbohydrate mark in a little gel. So these are going to be the things we're going to have during our training. Now with this, because you can only absorb only so many carbohydrates during your training session, you want to make sure during your event, whatever it's going to be, you want to make sure you're not having it all at once, because that's going to cause a lot of gastrointestinal upset. So if you are going to have these gels and things like that, or again, if it's going to be a carbohydrate solution that's going to contain 60 grams of carbohydrates in a bottle, you want to make sure when you're having that, you're actually sipping it throughout that hour. And we could kind of break it down if you wanted to. So let's say you had a full bottle, it contains 60 grams of carbohydrates, you divide it up into 4, so that way you're having 15 grams of carbohydrates every 15 minutes, give or take, a big swig of the bottle, get back into it. And that way you're kind of letting it get in your stomach, letting it break down and be used as fuel, but not causing any GI distress, because that's the last thing we want. You do not want to be trying to perform at your best and having any type of gut issues. So this is why we do try and find that limit. Everyone's going to be a little bit different, but they found about 60 grams of carbohydrates is going to be that top tier limit. However, what we actually can do to increase that even a little bit higher is use a carbohydrate and a fructose mix, okay? Now, there are a fair few gels out there that you can actually get that are going to be the combination of that. I think it's actually quite a fair few. It's more the norm than it is uncommon now to actually get those mixes, which means you can actually absorb a little bit higher, probably up to about 90 grams of carbohydrates per hour. And that's still a fair bit of carbohydrates, you know? But the thing is, depending on your pace and your intensity, you're probably going to be burning more than that an hour, but it's just to constantly be getting something into your body, getting those calories in, and just helping with that muscle contraction and to prevent fatigue. Because again, what we've actually found is even if you mouth rinse some type of carbohydrate solution and spit it out, we actually have receptors in our mouth that sense that carbohydrate. It can actually be a placebo in a way because it's now sensed carbohydrate and keep you on that path of keeping the intensity quite high during your training. So having just the carbohydrates swig in the mouth will actually still potentially do the job, but again, having the direct carbohydrates into your body, into your stomach, into your muscles, and just having that fuel consistently is going to help keep that intensity high and keep you performing at your best. So again, you're probably going to, you have to have a look at the gels and stuff that are out there. I can't tell you off the top of my head all the different ones that are there, but try and look for a solution that's a mixture of carbohydrate, of fructose and glucose together. They're going to be the best mix for you in order to be able to get that best performance, and so you don't get too much GI issues. And again, if it's going to be 90 grams an hour, then we just have to divide it by 4, whatever you're going to do. So it's probably going to be a little bit extra carbohydrate in that same solution, and then just break it down to quarterly. So you're always sipping on something because you don't want to scald your drink, as it will go straight through or it will cause GI distress quite quickly. So it's all about sipping it during your event to get it in, but don't scull it all at once. I'm having my blank. Don't scull it all at once, or don't try and save it all towards the end. Try and evenly, keep taking sips throughout it, so you're going to get through that whole solution in that hour. And then depend on what you're doing, whether it's longer distance and stuff like that, you can obviously 2 or 3 bottles based on how long that training's going to be. If you're a cyclist cycling for 3 or 4 hours, you definitely want to have at least 3 or 4 bottles with you in order to be able to get all that fuel in, because you are going to be burning through a lot of energy. Same thing as if you're a marathon runner, but marathon runners are ticking the clock over quite quick, so they're probably not going to need as many gels and stuff with them. And again, the more trained you get, the more likely you are also going to be able to use fat as a fuel source, so you're not going to be as reliant on those carbohydrate gels and things like that, but they're still going to increase your performance overall, And with saying that, fuel for performance, always making sure on when an event's coming up, having a lot of carbohydrates the night before and the morning of based on your training to have full muscle glycogen stores, okay? Because performance will be improved and be at your best when your muscle glycogen stores are saturated, which means you're full, they're full, We all have different amount of muscle glycogen we can have. It's going to be based on your body weight, based on the amount of muscle mass you have, and a few different things. But you want to try and make sure you are having the most amount of carbohydrates you can. And again, we've talked about energy availability. We've talked about your calorie balance, so figuring all that out, determining how many calories you need, having that amount of carbohydrates, I would say increase by another 10 to 15% the day before your race and the morning of your race to get all those carbohydrates in. That way you're going to be at full muscle glycogen stores. You're going to be able to hit it hard. You're going to be able to keep a good intensity and pace. And then you've got that fuel during your training, during your events to actually make sure you're keeping yourself fueled. Usually that within that first 45 minutes to an hour of something, you're not going to need the fuel, but after that hour mark, based on the intensity, it's going to start dropping down. Just to give you guys an example about, you can get trained to this. I do the assault bike for an hour, crush it for an hour. My heart rate sits at 180, which is 95 to 90% of my heart rate max, and yet I don't have anything. I do it on a fasted stomach. I have a no sugar Powerade, so it's just got the electrolytes in there, and that's all I have for that hour, and I'm sipping on it. But that's what I found. I can keep that intensity high without having the carbohydrates there because I've trained myself. Getting to an hour to push 300 watts in the assault bike has taken a long time, but I've gotten there and I've been able to train myself, and so I'm also having food the night before to fill up my muscle glycogen, so I do have muscle glycogen to burn. Okay, because even within that hour, for me, I'll give you guys an example. For me, I burn about 1,100 calories in the assault bike in an hour. 1,100 calories divided by 4. Off the top of my head, I can't really think about it. It's like 260 grams of carbohydrates, whatever it's going to be, probably less. So it's not a huge amount of carbohydrates to be honest. Like 260 grams, I'm holding a lot more of my muscle glycogen, so it hasn't been fully depleted, and that's why my intensity can stay quite high, because I'm slowly depleting muscle glycogen, but I'm not fully depleting it, and so you can keep that saturation you can keep that intensity quite low until you start to drop off, the more muscle glycogen depletes. And at the same time, if I was doing that for a longer period of time, longer than an hour, I could start to drink that carbohydrate solution coming into the second, let's say, second 30 minutes or the next hour, which I would not do 2 hours in the sulfite, but that's how I would fuel myself. Same thing as a run. Let's say I was running, what can I do? I can do about 10 Ks in 50 minutes, right? So if I was running 20 Ks, that's going to be, off the top of my head, I can't even think about it now. It's going to be, close to 2 hour mark. And after that first hour, that's when I would start to use a carbohydrate solution to help fuel my performance, So there's a time and place for it, but the best place to be having your carbohydrate will definitely be on the event day, if you're going to be doing something continuous. If you're someone who's doing more of like an interval sport, again, you might be playing rugby sevens, or you might be doing things where you do an event, you have a break, you do another event. Trying to get carbohydrates in between those are going to be your best thing, okay? And again, if you're having like a longer period of time before events, between events, let's say it's more than an hour and a half, have some lower glycemic carbohydrates so they can slowly be broken down into your body and be ready for that next event. The further apart we are, the more we can have those slower digesting carbohydrates to be broken down in the body, and then that way, when the time comes to the next event, you're already going to have your muscle glycogen starting to be restored. You're also going to have food still being broken down in the body slowly, which means you'll have an immediate source to carbohydrate, right? So again, it's going to be very context dependent based on what you're doing. Now, if you're someone training in the gym, you're not really going to need carbohydrates, to be honest. Some people drink Powerade and stuff like that during their training, simply because they may need the extra calories. Like myself, it's an easy way to get an extra 160 calories in just by sipping Powerade during my training. But it's not really doing much for me, I'm never going to be going into a workout muscle glycogen depleted. I'm never going to be training so hard for an hour that it's going to deplete all of my muscle glycogen. So this thinking about we need to be fueled in the gym is kind of bullshit at the end of the day. If you've eaten carbohydrates after your last workout and you've eaten carbohydrates in the first few meals between your next workout, you're never going to need to be fully saturated in your muscles, or you're never going to need to think that you have to top up during your training session, because you're never going to use a significant amount of glycogen to really be noticeable anyways with your training. So again, this really just depends on your sport and what you're doing, and if you actually need that application. And for the most part, if you're a field athlete, if you're a track athlete, if you're someone who's doing the longer stuff, marathon running, swimming, triathlete, playing rugby sevens and stuff like that, that's when it's going to be applicable. But for the everyday gym goer, wouldn't even stress about having some type of intra fuel during your workout. So, hope that was helpful, guys. Nice and simple today. If you have any questions, as always, hit me up on Instagram @TysonTheTrainer with 2 R's. And until next time, I'll speak to you then.